Hello there. How are you doing? Happy New Year and welcome to 2021. A year which hopefully will be better than 2020. But who knows? We're in the early days yet. I was thinking that about this time last year, I think at least Australia was on fire. And nothing seems to be massively on fire to the best of my knowledge at the moment. So maybe we'll be okay, we'll have to see. I hope you're all keeping safe. You may be in lockdown. I am out of lockdown, having been in lockdown before Christmas, but I seem to go in and out of lockdown a bit like a demonic version of the hokey cokey. So who knows when I'll be in lockdown again. If you're watching from the UK, hope you are definitely staying safe. The things there look terrifying. Who knew we would still be struggling with this virus in a new year? Or in a new decade, as some people say. I don't know how the numbering works, because apparently 0 would be, yeah, it makes sense, it does make sense. Anyway, a very quick video today, my first one of the year. You remember when I did the predictions video right at the end of last year, I was talking about various things I thought might happen in the new year. One of them was attacks on big tech. And one of the big news stories at the beginning of the year, well, the end of last year, beginning of this year, has been what has happened to Alibaba and Ant Financial. There's investigations that are taking place in China as opposed to basically investigating potential anti-competitive conduct. I don't have much detail on it, to be perfectly honest. I've only read the same news stories you've all read. But it's interesting that this is the same angle that was being used by Congress when they were looking at the big four, when they were looking at Amazon, Google, Facebook, and indeed Apple, stating they have essentially monopolies and they can use that monopolies to manipulate markets, manipulate consumers, and that may necessarily be a bad thing. Who knows? Now, I wanted to take a bit of a deviation from this and talk about competition law because it's interesting that of all the ways, and I often thought that it would be data privacy law that big tech would get the biggest attacks from, but it's fine that it's actually a well-known tool to go after big companies is using competition law and regulation. Now, if you think back to the EU's treatment of Microsoft when it bundled Internet Explorer with every copy of Windows and pretty much forced you to use it, you'll see got a pretty good example of what can happen when you annoy the EU and end up in a bit of an antitrust situation. You had to sell a version of Windows without Internet Explorer included, which I'm sure nobody really missed because everyone else was using something else. But I guess by then they'd already got rid of Netscape, so Microsoft maybe didn't mind. And their new Edge browser is actually pretty good, so I recommend it, although it was installed automatically in the last update, which is a bit frustrating. But it's interesting that this is now used to attack 10 companies. So what I wanted to do, rather than giving you a sort of a lecture on how competition law works, but give you the basics for basically, I guess, most competition laws around the world. My qualification is Hong Kong law and England and Wales law, so I know the ones in the EU, not that we're in the EU anymore, but in the EU and in Hong Kong. But most laws follow the same principles, and they try and stop two broad ways of being anti-competitive. This is where an organisation, person, they call it an undertaking in most of the laws, where something or somebody or someone essentially does something or engages in a practice or sets up some sort of agreements which has the result, not necessarily the intention, but the result of causing anti-competitive results. That's the best way to do it. Think of it as distorting competition in the jurisdiction where the law applies, meaning that perhaps things aren't as fair as they could be. A good example is having an agreement between 3 providers saying, you know what, we're really good in one particular area, we're going to carve up the market into 3 sectors and we won't compete with each other. We will share each other's pricing information so we all charge the same thing, make sure we all get an equal share of the pie. That would be anti-competitive because, of course, it's the consumer at the end of the day that loses out. You can apply this to all sorts of real-world scenarios. I like to apply it to supermarkets here in Hong Kong. I'm a big fan, if you've ever seen me, of drinking certain diet beverages. This isn't my favourite, this is Coke Zero, and I much prefer traditional Diet Coke, which appears to be dying out in Hong Kong, much to my horror, replaced with Coca-Cola Plus. But I always find it very odd that all of the 7-Elevens, Park and Shops, these are all supermarket or convenience store brands, Circle K's, the prices all seem to go up and down for the price of a Diet Coke, all almost in unison, no matter where you go. And I've always wondered why that is. I've always thought maybe it would be anti-competitive behaviour, but nobody has investigated yet. Perhaps it is not. Perhaps it's all a massive coincidence. But these are the sort of things you see. So that's the first way you can be anti-competitive. So imagine if you will, Google, Alibaba, picking names out of the hat. This is all just none of this is true. I'm just using it as an example. And Amazon all decided that they would charge exactly the same price for all of their services, or they tried to be in a position where they would only offer their service in certain markets. That may be seen as anti-competitive conduct because it means you can't choose. You lose your freedom of choice as a consumer. It's anti-competitive. So that is the first way that these companies can be anti-competitive. Now that's not normally the way, and it's certainly not the way that Congress went after the big four, and it's certainly not the way I think that China is now going after Alibaba, that anti-competitive conduct is viewed. Instead, they're looking at the second way that you can distort competition. And this applies to monopolies. This is essentially where you've become a player with an enormous market share. So I think the wording in most of the law is someone with a dominant market, with dominant market power. So you're the big fish in whatever pond you're in, but you use that power to essentially distort competition, maybe by forcing people to sign into agreements saying they couldn't use anyone else, some sort of exclusivity requirement. And exclusivity requirements, if you are in a position of great power, can be a bit of a tricky situation. Or you in some way try and restrict the supply of goods into a particular market. You do something that is somehow anti-competitive. Now, what I am not seeing, and I'm coming down on the side of all the tech companies on this one, as of yet, is how Apple, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and now indeed Alibaba or Ant Financial have actually used their dominant market position to disrupt competition. I think they made it more difficult for smaller players, and I would say now that if you're a big tech company, with the exception of one or two, it's almost unassailable that someone can take your place. I think it will change some great tech revolution, an epoch-changing innovation for that to happen. But I don't necessarily see how they've necessarily been anti-competitive. I do wonder whether actually in these cases the law is used to say, well, you know what, we need to find evidence of this, because I'm pretty sure there must be some. This is the organisation investigating them, because this company has now got too big for its boots. And big for its boots is not a legal phrase. So we'll have to see. I would be interested if you could give me examples of what you think may be anti-competitive conduct. It may be where a certain provider is forcing someone to use a product. It may be where someone's got essentially forcing other players out of the market, which may be a dominant market share may allow you to do. I suppose that would be most likely the sort of stick that you could beat these companies with. But again, you need some pretty clear evidence to do that to actually bring a case. And these cases are normally heard by either a dedicated competition court or by the general courts in the relevant jurisdiction. I don't know how they're done in China, by the way, so don't ask me. Now, the thing is, if you are trying to prove this anti-competitive conduct, most tech companies, in fact most big companies, will have a dedicated team to deal with antitrust and anti-competitive behaviour. They know that it is a big risk. They've seen the massive fines that have been imposed over the years in various jurisdictions. So I'd be very surprised if they've fallen foul of it unless someone is acting without really consulting the legal team. Tip for anyone, consult your legal team before you do something you think might be a problem. So I mean, I'm very much a layman in terms of competition, apart from where it involves the tech industry. But as a lawyer, most big law firms have a dedicated competition practice that would only deal with competition cases. It is that big an area of law. So again, I'm surprised that they've fallen foul. But I wondered, is this the first way? Is this the way that actually big tech will be attacked? Is the move on Alibaba, I know lots of people think it might be a political move instead, maybe. We'll wait and see on that one. I know that Alibaba is so big that perhaps the Chinese government may be worried that they're doing something anti-competitive, so let's see it that way. But is this going to be the way that big tech comes under attack at the beginning of 2021? And is it something that will continue? Certainly Microsoft got into lots of trouble, as I said at the beginning, but it didn't really do them any major harm in the long run. Internet Explorer remained being, in fact, some people are still using Internet Explorer. If you are still using Internet Explorer, please stop. But anyway, on that positive note, let me know what you think. I would be very interested. I will be back again very soon when something more exciting happens in the world of tech. Maybe I can talk about the vaccine wars and how that's all quite interesting. But at the moment, I think I'll wait until I've actually got the vaccine. I feel safe going out before I can do that. I'm going to put my mask back on. Have a good rest of the day. See you very soon.